love to know what the word gutsy means to you.
I think gutsy means being aligned and living the life on your terms. And I think so often we say that in such a glib way, and it makes it sound easy, but it is hard at times to really stand tall and true to what you believe and what you desire and that vision you have, not just for your company, but for you and your family and your life and what you want that to look like. And that is really gutsy. It's when you can roll your shoulders back and hold your chin up high and you can say, this is what I want, and I'm not afraid to say it.
You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. Whether you need an inspirational pick-me-up or a swift kick in the mental ass, the Gutsy Podcast is your bi-weekly guide to getting out of your head and back into action. I'm LauraAura, branding and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, CEO of Works & Co., and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. It's time to fuel your gutsy. Have you ever started your day with full intentions of getting things accomplished, and then one ding of an email took you down a rabbit hole of to-dos and needs, and before you know it, you've gotten to the end of the day, you know you've worked your face off, but what have I actually accomplished? You have ideas and passions you want to bring into the world, but you can't seem to get enough time to do them. And you're probably doing 100 things and not seeing the results you know that you could be experiencing. That's why we're talking with Tanya Dalton about purposeful productivity. So you not only feel accomplished, but also start seeing some results as well. Tanya is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, and nationally recognized productivity expert. She helps executives and entrepreneurs step into purposeful leadership. Her books have been translated into 8 languages around the world, and her first book, The Joy of Missing Out, was named a top 10 business book of the year by Fortune magazine. Her podcast, The Intentional Advantage, has received millions of downloads and listens around the world. She's a featured expert on several networks, including NBC and Fox, and is a VIP contributor for Entrepreneur.com and Forbes.com. Tanya is considered a thought leader in purposeful productivity and leadership by some of the world's leading publications, including Forbes, Inc., Fast Company, and Real Simple. Before we chat with Tanya today, have you ever been in one of those situations where you're like, okay, I know that there is something that needs to shift, but I can't quite put my finger on it? When you begin to shift your world and your business, everything can feel like, okay, which direction do I go in first? So I created this free quiz. It's called the Power Elite Quiz, and it's intended to help you discover where you may be unintentionally giving away your power. This is a really great starting point, because if you can discover where you're unintentionally giving away your power, that gives you some direction, that gives you some clarity, and I'll also give you some ways where you can start to reclaim that part of yourself as well. And reminder, you don't have to shift everything today. This is intended to be a guiding light to help you know where to focus your time and your efforts. So if you're ready to find out where you may be unintentionally giving away your power and learn how to reclaim it, go to LauraAura.com/Power Elite Quiz to take the free quiz today. All right, my friends, Tanya has a wealth full of knowledge to share with you to help you be more productive in your day and in your life. So let's get into today's episode. Tanya, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you are all about productivity, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But I know that there has to be a story and a journey that has led you to where you are today. So tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, well, I like to say that really I really made a big shift into entrepreneurship in 2008. Right before the Great Recession. Great time to do
I was right in that same time frame. 2007, I launched my business. So I was in the thick of it with you.
Yeah, right next to me, it sounds like. But I started my first business, honestly, thinking it was going to be this side business, a little side thing that I did. I started it with $50. And I, was selling to friends, maybe friends of friends, didn't have a website, wasn't doing anything fancy. And my husband at the time was doing international marketing for Fortune 500 companies. So he would buy a ticket called the Around the World ticket, which meant he left our home in Dallas and he would literally circle the globe, touching the different continents, coming back the other side. So he would be gone for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. So these marathon trips. And, I had this conversation with him this one evening. He would call, we would talk in the morning and in the evening as one of us was getting up, the other one was going to bed. And I was telling him all the things that the kids were doing and all the things that were happening. And he got really, really quiet. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm missing everything. I'm missing all the moments. I'm missing all the milestones. I'm missing all of this." And I was like, "Oh, no, you're not. The kids are really excited when you come home." But it really dawned on me that this really was pulling on him, that he loved doing the marketing, but he didn't love being away from home. So I hung up the phone in my bright yellow kitchen that night, and I made a big, bold decision. I decided I was going to grow this little side hobby business that I started for $50, and I was going to grow it to absorb his MBA income. So my husband had his MBA, was making great money, and here I am, a mom with 2 small kids, 0 business experience. I had been a teacher in my former life, didn't even take a business course in college. And yet I set this big, bold goal for myself. And within about a year, I made that goal happen. And he was able to come work alongside of me. He has been working for me since 2009. And that has been fantastic. We have loved that. It gave us a lot of the freedoms that I know a lot of your listeners enjoy: the time freedom, the financial freedom, the location freedom. We even moved to where we wanted to live. We moved from Dallas. We moved to Asheville, North Carolina. And about a year after we moved here, I looked at my husband and I said, "I love you. I love working with you. I don't love what I'm doing." It was supposed to be this little side business, and it wasn't really something I was truly passionate about. So he said, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't I have no idea. I mean, this business I had started was paying all of our bills. It was taking us on fancy vacations, bought us a nice big house, fed my kids the 3 meals a day. They do like to eat every single day.
Rightfully so.
Right. But it wasn't checking the boxes of what was making me feel satisfied and fulfilled and making the impact in the world I really wanted to. I mentioned I was a teacher, and teachers are all about the impact, right? Helping other people. So I really took some time to step back and assess, what is it I'm passionate about? And I knew I was really passionate about working with women. I was doing a lot of small business consulting, helping other women grow their businesses. I knew I was really passionate about teaching. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So I love that service side of helping people figure things out. And I love productivity because that's what allowed me to scale and grow a business the way that I had. And other people would ask me, like, "How are you doing these things?" And I would say, "Oh, I just do these, I do this and I do that." And they'd be like, "Hold on, wait a minute, what?" So I knew I was doing things very differently. So out of these 3 very unconnected, unrelated things, I connected them with a thread of Inkwell Press Productivity Company, the company I started. And I scaled that and grew that to 7 figures in less than 18 months. And that just took off. Before you knew it, we were selling on our website, but also in Office Depot, Office Max stores, Barnes and Noble. That allowed me to start really leaning into the service side of what I wanted to do with my podcast. And then all of a sudden I had publishing houses reaching out to me saying they wanted me to write a book. And so I ended up writing 2 books with HarperCollins. And it's just been this amazing journey to where I am today, all these twists and turns and unexpected, detours and rerouting.
What a powerhouse. Look, when I was reading your bio, I was like, yes, I'm about to share the space with this woman because I think it's so amazing and powerful and beautiful when women say yes to themselves. And when we give ourselves permission, even when we're not sure what's next, right? Like that's one of the parts of your story that I love, is that pivot of that feeling of knowing that you were no longer fulfilled, but then giving yourself permission to figure out what that is next. And I think that the fear of not knowing stops a lot of women. Do you experience that in your world as well?
Oh, without question. Without question. I think we feel so often like we have to have it all figured out. And if we don't have it all figured out, there's something wrong with us, right? And I think part of it is we've all been sold this bill of goods that if you did X, then you're going to get Y. Right? Like there's this mathematical thing where it's like, oh, I have to jump through these hoops. First, I have to go to college. I have to get a 4-year degree. Then I have to do these things and these things. Then eventually I'm going to be happy. And eventually things are going to work out. And the truth is, life is not a straight line. It's full of these detours and this rerouting. And I truly believe that it's often the detours that get us to where we're really meant to be. That sometimes we're on this super highway of life and we're going speed limit 65, but we're going about 80 down the highway. And then all of a sudden we look down and we're like, wait, I'm off track. I'm not where I'm supposed to be or where I should be. But if we stop and we give ourselves the space, sometimes we go, wait, I actually like where I am right now. This is pretty nice. There's a beautiful view and there's this great restaurant we could stop at. And that's such a great thing to stop and assess from time to time. Do I like where I am? And I think especially as entrepreneurs, we feel like, okay, I started my business. I'm here to grow the business. And even if it's not checking the boxes of what makes us feel fulfilled or empowered or excited, we're like, okay, I'm stuck with it. This is my other kid. It's the loudest kid, the one that throws the most tantrums, but it's my kid and I'm stuck with it. And that's not true. It's sometimes let's get off that highway, take a little breath, and let's figure out, do I like where I am? You might say, yes, I want to get back on that highway. Fantastic. All right, let's reroute to get you back on that highway. Or you might say, yeah, I really like this instead. I mean, if you had told me 20 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would say, wait, who, me? I'd be doing this? I would have never been able to plan where I am. But thank God I let go of all of that and I let myself get here because I love where I am. I'm so passionate about it. So there is a lot of letting go of the control and knowing exactly how you need to get there.
Yes. Yeah. That let go thing. That's
a tough one.
That's the kicker, right? And also even giving yourself time to stop. Because I think that's the other part of this equation is like, okay, to pull off the highway, and I love a good analogy, to pull off the highway and stop and assess that, are you going to let yourself get off the highway for a second, right? Are you going to give yourself time to think about it or feel about it or process it or do whatever you need to do? We're just constantly running and moving and shifting and fixing and being and doing and all this stuff. Do you want change or do you want to keep perpetuating more of the same? So I think that's one of the big questions that it boils down to is, are you willing to stop for a second?
Are you willing to stop and are you willing to ask the questions? Because sometimes we don't want to ask the questions because we're afraid of the answers. And that's okay to be afraid of the answers, right?
That's the one.
It's tough. And for me, I know with my business, one of the things that has been so important for me is that I literally block off a day as we get towards the end of each quarter. A couple of weeks before the quarter ends, I block off a day, and that day is specifically for reflection. All right, where am I? Just like we talked about on that highway, right? Where am I? Do I like where I am? Did I get off of track? Do I like where I am off track? Do I want to get back to where I'm going? What went well? What were some things that were wins? But even bigger, what were the fails? What were the things that were terrible? What were the things I don't want to repeat? And I think those are the questions we're so often afraid of. We don't want to talk about the things that are the ugly messes or the missteps or the mistakes or the failures. But to be honest with you, those are the places where I've grown the most. Those are the places when we can push against regret and build that resilience. And I can give you a perfect example of how I've done that in my business, to be honest with you. Yeah. So we had a season. So Inkwell Press creates these physical products, which people always think, oh, it's so fun. You have physical products. I'm like, manufacturing, freighting, factories, all kinds of fun things. But we had our shipment come and I thought I was ahead of the game. It was coming in plenty of time before the launch. We had a giant warehouse. We unload everything, get it into the warehouse. I open up the first box. Everything's damaged. Open up the second box. Everything is damaged. It's all been packed completely wrong. Everything is damaged. And I give myself about 15 minutes to go to my office and cry because I got to clean myself up and get out to do the pep talk for the employees, right? Come back out and I'm like, okay, we got to figure out how we're going to shift and how we're going to pivot this. So we come up with a plan, and it's not a fun plan because it means really rolling up our sleeves and working long hours. So, but I knew I had to do it. If I wanted to save my company, I can't sell damaged products, and my whole warehouse is full of damaged products. So we started this, process of pulling out what we could, what was salvageable and what wasn't. And I was there working 7 days a week, long days. My kids would come straight after school. They would come, they would do their homework on the floor of the warehouse. And it was tough. 3 months of this just constant day in, day out. And I got to the end of that and I did my reflection. And you know what I thought to myself? I'm the world's worst mom. I didn't have any time to play with my kids. There was no play dates. There was no after school activities. I did not have the bandwidth for it. And I felt terrible. And so I could either soak in that and just label myself, well, I guess I'm the world's worst mom, or I could push against that. And that's really when I decided, you know what? I'm going to have really strong boundaries. I am no longer going to work on Fridays. I am going to leave work every day at 3:00. And I created these really strong boundaries for myself that I have kept up for years at this point. And it's been so beneficial to me, but I never would have thought that was possible if I wasn't pushing against regret, if I wasn't pushing against being the world's worst mom.
Yeah, that's such a great story because one, I think it's super relatable, right? Especially for the mamas out there who are building a business and building a family all at the same time, like juggling that. I mean, that could be a whole episode of its own, right? But to push back against it and not make that your identity, to not believe that to be true, but rather see it as an opportunity to shift something so that you can have more of what you truly want, which was intentional time with your kids, and time with yourself as well, right? So brilliant story and a great reminder that we don't have to become the thoughts that pop into our mind, that we actually do have a choice.
We do. And it is sometimes the tough questions, the questions that we don't want to hear the answers to. Nobody wants to say they're the world's worst mom. Nobody does. But when we ask those questions, we grow so much from it. And that's really what shifts us and allows us to step into who we're really wanting to be. So I really encourage people to block that time off. I block off a whole day where my team knows I'm out of contact. I want to dive deep. I do 2 days actually in the fall as I'm preparing for the coming year. But having that time and that space to really intentionally step back, I think as entrepreneurs, we lose sight and we think about what we are doing and not what we are envisioning. And I think our job as leaders is to zoom out. We zoom up and we get what I like to call the forest view. I think so often we're in the thick of it. All we can see are the trees. We got to zoom out. We got to look at the forest view and we have to say, okay, here's where I want to go next. Because then we can communicate that to our team members and we can make sure that we're all moving in that direction together. Or even if you're a solopreneur, where is it I want to go next? It's really easy to get lost in the forest if you're not zooming out and saying, here's the edge of the forest, or here's the waterfall over here. That's where I want to go.
Absolutely. Look, I like to call it the weeds, the being down in the trees, down in the weeds, down in the ditches of things. And it is so easy to stay there, right? Because chances are, if you're listening, you're the one that started the business. So that means that you know how to do most of it, probably because you've created it. And so that immediate tug to like, well, I know how to do that, so I'll just do it real quick. Or, I can do this and then I don't have to delegate it or pay somebody else to do it. Or like, you just keep kind of like getting pulled back down into it. And gosh, once you get down in there, it is very hard to get back up and look at it from the bird's eye view. So what are some recommendations that you have when people are finding themselves kind of down in the trees, in the trenches of things?
Yeah, well, it really is shifting that mindset from operator, from the doer to owner, right? And that's one of the big shifts you have to make. I think a lot of times we get into whatever it is we're doing or creating because we love that thing, right? Ooh, I love this activity. So that's what it looks like long-term. And we feel like we have to have our hands in it. And there is that element of control, right? That we kind of touched on earlier, that, well, if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it right. And the truth is, there was a phrase that I heard one time. I don't remember where I heard it, but it shifted a lot for me, which is, 100% done well by someone else is better than 80% done perfectly by you. And that's the truth. It's not about doing it perfectly or doing it in a very specific way. It's what is good enough and letting go of some of that. It really does require you taking your hands out of the pie as you're making the pie or whatever it is, taking your hands off and trusting your team. So it really dives into this idea of communication, making sure you're communicating, hey, I did the forest view. This is where we're all going. So everyone knows and everyone's moving in that same direction. You're communicating your expectations. Hey, this is what I'm expecting this project, this task, this whatever it is to look like. I think a lot of times we get frustrated because we assign something and we don't really delegate, we abdicate. We're like, just take it. I don't have time to explain it to you. Just go do it. And then they give it to us and we're like, well, this looks like shit. This isn't at all what I wanted. And it's not their fault. That's our fault that we haven't communicated that. And I think so often we feel like we don't have the time to communicate it. Well, I'm too busy. I have too much to do. And I would say you're too busy not to make that time, because truthfully, that's going to buy you back a lot of time. If you communicate really well with somebody else on your team or a contractor or whoever it is that's doing this work for you, you're going to get back what you really want. So being really clear about, these are my expectations. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. This is how much time I think it should take you. Here's when I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to check in once every 2 weeks or once a week or whatever feels good to you. Communicating that on the front end allows you to take your hands off of it and allows other people to thrive. Delegation is such a great opportunity. I think if we start looking at delegation as investment into other people, it really is an investment in your team because it allows them to grow and evolve and shift, which means eventually you're not doing everything because they have that growth. And when I say delegating to your team, I'm not just talking about your team at work. I'm talking about your team at home as well. Your kids, your spouse or significant other, your roommate, other people in your world can do some of these things that a lot of times we feel like nobody else can do. If we just take that time and we look at it as, you know what, I could totally do this faster. But if I step back and I invest a little more time on the front end for a little period, all of a sudden I'm not going to have to spend any time at all doing that. That's powerful.
Oh my gosh, it frees up so much time. And I know a lot of the hesitation on the front end is like you mentioned, I don't have time to sit and go through this. Or like right now I'm documenting a process because I realized I got back into the weeds. I'm like, do I want to sit here and document this process? Not particularly. Do I want to empower my team so that they're following like the team standards? And do I want to get myself out of this so that I can do more of the thing that I want and need to do? Yes. So it's this like temporary discomfort to empower everybody involved. And ultimately, so you can get out of the way. Like I talk about it all the time. Like I want to give this to you and get out of the way, because a lot of times if I get back involved, things get messed up.
Yeah, you're the bottleneck. And then we get frustrated when nothing moves forward without our approval. But we've created that bottleneck. If we feel like we have to have our hands on everything, it's no surprise that you don't feel like you can take a day off work or you can go on vacation. I really think every single business owner, and I do this myself, I've done this for years, we should all be able to go away and unplug completely with no contact from our team for at least a week. I mean, that's how you test your systems out. Absolutely. I do that. I do not. I'm like, there's no Wi-Fi package. Do not call me. Do not text me. If the building is burning down and on fire, there's nothing I can do anyways. So I'll find out about it when I come back from vacation. There's not even a need to call me for that. Figure it out. And honestly, when I come back from those times away, those unplugged vacations, 9 times out of 10, my team has already like pulled together and done something amazing that they're like, we have all these ideas. And I'm like, oh, I should get out of the office more often. Right. You guys are doing incredible things. I'm slowing you down. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the second piece of that too is like being willing to ask for help, because that's the other kind of pride piece that comes along with it of like, you know, I should be able to do this myself, or I shouldn't want to ask for help, or I don't like doing this. That automatically means that they don't want to do this either, kind of the grunt work or the crap work. But the reframe of that is the things that drive you nuts probably fulfill somebody else, the right person in the right role. They're going to like, gimme. I love that. Let me do it.
Yes. Somebody on your team loves spreadsheets.
Yep.
Somebody on your team is just like, ooh, I could get a few more spreadsheets. And you're like, please take it. One of the exercises I do with my team is when I do the review process, I have them write out all their different tasks that they do. Tell me all the different tasks that you do throughout the year, the ones you're doing on a regular basis, the ones you're doing for special occasions, and they just list them out. Part of that, first of all, is because a lot of times as the boss, I'm putting things on their plate and then I have forgotten that I put it on their plate. And then I look and I'm like, ooh, you're doing these. Oh, you shouldn't be doing those things, right? Yep. Oh, we should outsource those from you because you're not your pay grade is higher than this person over here. But then what I have them do after they've made this whole list of what they do, I have them divided up into different categories, and they categorize them into things that I love doing, things that I like doing, things that I don't like as much. Notice I didn't say hate, right?
Yeah.
Things I don't like as much. And then things I wish I could do more of. And that last category, that's where the gold is at. That's how I discovered that I had a warehouse assistant who had taken photography classes in college and was really passionate about photography. And she was like, oh, I wish I could do more product photos. And I'm like, hold on a second. You can show me some of the things you can do. And all of a sudden, guess what? She's doing our product photography. So I then had it all in-house. Or that's how I discovered that another one of my team members had a graphic design background. And then all of a sudden she was doing more of the graphic design work. And so it really becomes this treasure trove of your team has all these gifts that maybe you haven't tapped into that are right there. So doing this, and they do it every year, things I love, things I like. I want to know the difference between the things they love and the things they like. And I tell them, hey, that third category, things I don't like so much, I'm going to do my best to get some of those things off your plate, but we all have things we don't like. I don't really like meeting with my accountant and talking about taxes. I don't really like, right? There's always going to be some of those things. But this is really helpful because let's say your person says, I really don't like spreadsheets. And you have somebody else in your team who's saying, I wish I could do more spreadsheets. It's really interesting how it tends to like even itself all out. You're like, hold on, spreadsheets over here to you instead, who's like, ah, yay, spreadsheets. And the person who didn't like them is now doing more of what they do love or more of what's in their zone of genius. We should all be operating mostly in our zone of genius.
Talk about efficiency and happiness meters going up, right? Like when I always call it like everyone's on the right seat of the bus and we're all going to the same destination. Like that rising tide truly does lift all ships. Would you recommend that is an activity that owners can do as well? Look, I am a sucker for everyone being in the right seat of the bus headed in the same direction. But delegating is not always so easy, is it? You have to be willing to let go of something, let go of control, and empower the people around you to do what they do best. One way to strengthen this muscle is to surround yourself with like-minded people and those who are maybe already doing this. Inside the Gutsy Collective, which is a free Facebook group, we love to do weekly accountability checks. And this is a really great place to say like, hey, here is my intent. This is what I want to do this week, what I want to focus on this week. And next week, I'm going to report back at how it went. Accountability is very fucking effective, my friends. So if you are looking for that support, if you are ready to delegate some things, but need some of those people around you as you do it, go to LauraAura.com and click on the Gutsy Collective, or scroll down and click on the Gutsy Collective link below.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually one of the things I do during I remember I said that I do 2 days towards the end of the year. Yeah. I list out all the tasks that I'm doing and I focus in on what are the tasks I love that I really want to do. What are the tasks that I like that, okay, I should, and what are the tasks I hate? As the owner, I should be able to jettison most of those to outsourcing them to either 1099s or, different people on my team or wherever, because truly, if I'm not operating in my zone of genius, then the whole ship is going to be sinking, because that's the thing is I'm the captain. I'm the one who decides where we're going. And if I'm so busy doing the work that doesn't really fulfill me, which means it takes a lot more of my time up, then I'm not really doing a service to myself or my team or the company. So yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing because much like, you mentioned with the employees, you're giving things out and you don't realize like how things kind of stack up. It happens to the owner mostly, dare I say, more than anybody on the team, because it all kind of starts there. So a powerful exercise. I'm curious, because you mentioned that you were saying that people were noticing that you were doing things differently, that your productivity was different than others. Tell me a little bit about what some of those different pieces were, what made your productivity just seem to like shine so differently.
I think it's because I've grown a thriving business to 7 figures and my personal life is thriving. I literally leave work at 3:00 every day, and I don't work on Fridays. And people are like, how are you possibly doing this? And it does come down to a lot of these pieces where, like you were saying, the SOPs, doing your operating and figuring out how things work. A lot of times people say, I don't have time for that. And so it was really understanding where I was investing my time. And I think a lot of people have a to-do list, especially as owners. We have this to-do list that is far too long. It's like 3 miles long. It's like 72 hours worth of tasks that we expect to cram into our 8-hour day. And then we're like, oh, why did I not get this all done? I feel terrible about myself. Well, because you put too much on your plate, right? And we're driving ourselves crazy going in all these different directions. I've created a priority list for years. What do I need to prioritize? What are the first things I need to tackle? Our brain naturally wants to go for the dopamine hit. Our brain gets this little dopamine hit, this little high when we check something off our list. It's like, ooh, this is why we write things on our list we've already done. Because it
absolutely.
feels really good. It feels so, you're like, look at me, everybody, I did this, right? But this is the thing is our brain is going after all these little small check marks instead of going after the big things. And so this is the mistake a lot of business owners make. We're wearing all the hats, even though maybe you don't even look good in hats, and we're trying to wear them all at the same time. So instead, I would prioritize. I would figure out what's my priorities for the day. And one of the things that I would do to really help facilitate this is I would create themed days. So Monday was Marketing Monday, Tuesday was Team Tuesdays, Warehouse was, on Wednesdays. I like alliteration because it just kind of helps.
I mean, it feels good.
But I have a thing for that, right? Like it makes my head happy. But what I do is, so on Mondays, if that's my marketing day, marketing is going to be my priority. That's where I'm going to spend the majority of my time. That's not to say if something comes up with finances or something comes up in the warehouse, I'm not going to tackle it. It's just saying to myself, this is my priority for the day. So I'm going to dive into there first. I think a lot of times as business owners, everybody's going shallow because you're trying to go in all the directions at the same time. We don't want to go shallow. I don't want to go shallow in any aspect of my life, not my business, not in my friendships or relationships, not with my work that I do. I always want to go deep. And by having a theme day where marketing gets the focus on Monday, I'm going deep into marketing on Monday and getting some amazing things done. And I'm in that mindset and I get in that flow. So it all feels easier, right? Now, if marketing needs to be talked about on Thursday, I'll still do it, but Thursday's got a different priority. So it has to get squeezed in. It's not the priority. And so by doing this, I'm going deeper and I'm getting better work done in less time. And people were thinking, well, how are you possibly doing this? And I'm like, well, it's simple. It's not that hard. I really feel like what I teach is not rocket science. It's all these simple shifts in how you think and how you look at what you're doing and understanding that you get to choose what you do. You get to choose where you focus. You get to choose what you prioritize. You get to choose what goes on your calendar. And by leaning into that, we take in a lot of that power, and that allows us to really step into what it is we want, where we want our business to go. We get to choose what direction our business goes in. That's amazing because our business gets to impact so many people's lives.
Absolutely. Look, I love a good theme day because I think it's so undervalued of how much more efficient you can work when you stay in a subject, right? When you stay in a focus, like you were talking about Marketing Monday, when you're marketing minded, your brain turns on into marketing, then you're just looking at all of the marketing pieces without, like, I always call it playing a professional game of whack-a-mole, right? Like this thing pops up, boom, put it down. This thing pops up, boom, put it down. And before you know it, that's why you're getting home at the end of the day saying, I just worked my face off and I got nothing accomplished.
What did I do? Yeah. Well, and not only does it allow your mind to really flow and get in that state, but also my marketing team knows if something small crops up on Wednesday, they can go, oh, you know what? We'll talk about this on Monday. This is fine. So they're not creating more moles that are popping up for me to whack, right? So it's a win-win. Plus, they feel like they're getting the attention that they need and deserve and desire. And so they have their times where they're going to have some FaceTime with me so that way we're going to get those answers to those questions they have. Or, it really makes everybody in the office understand, oh, okay, I'm going to have time. We're going to get this figured out.
That's brilliant as well, because ultimately, not only are we training our teams and support by like the pieces, but we're also training the communication and the timelines. And like, if you're answering your emails the second they come in, you're training people to expect an answer right away, right? Like, it's those sorts of things. So even just if they know, like, hey, I know that she's going to be in marketing on Monday, I'm just going to bank this and we'll talk about it on Monday. Like, that is intentional training. Brilliant.
Is intentional training. And that goes, what you just said there, I think goes for your team. It also goes for your clients and your customers.
Yes.
Right? If you are a person who a client sends you an email and you're like, oh, I got to respond immediately. Or let's say that you are a person who loves to work late at night. And so sometimes you're up till midnight working and you're replying to a client right at midnight. You are setting an expectation. You are setting a boundary that, hey, if you email me, I'm always going to reply, no matter what time of day. So I think it's really important to understand the difference between hours of business and hours of availability. Hours of availability are when you're available for your customers and your clients. Hours of business are when you're working in your business. And sometimes your hours of business are going to be early in the morning because you're an early riser and you love to get things done at 4 a.m. Or they're going to be at 11 o'clock at night because you're a night owl and you really feel like that's your productive time. But what you can do is not respond to your clients during that time. You can schedule those to send during office hours, right? During your normal hours of availability. So again, you're training them as well at the same time. It's really important to have these boundaries in place. I feel like we often get so frustrated when people overstep our boundaries. We get mad when that client expects an email back at midnight, or an employee is texting us at an inopportune time. But if we haven't really clearly communicated and established our boundaries, that's on us, not on them. So again, it's really exerting and setting, these are the boundaries of when I'm available for your team and also for your customers and clients.
Absolutely. A question comes to mind that I know somebody's thinking right now, and it's, how do I prioritize when everything is seemingly on fire, right? How do I prioritize when everything needs to be done now?
Yeah. Well, I would say if everything's a priority, nothing is. Because if all things are equal, then nothing is important. So I have a system that I like to tell people that it's called the C.L.E.A.R method. So the first question we ask ourselves, we're going to ask ourselves a series of 5 questions. Each letter of C.L.E.A.R stands for a letter. So C is it connected to a goal? So if the answer is yes, you hold up a finger. Every time you answer yes, you hold up a finger. So is it connected to a goal? If it is, you say yes. Okay, hold up a finger. Okay, is this linked to my North Star, my mission, my vision, my core values? If it's a yes, we hold up a finger. If it's not, don't hold up a finger, right? Then we say, E, is this essential? In other words, does this have to be done by me, or is this something I could give to somebody else? Again, if it's a yes, you hold up your finger. If not, you don't hold up a finger. A, is it advantageous? Is this something that if I work on it today is going to bear fruit in the future? Is this an investment of time? Is this going to be an advantage for me later on? Okay. And then we have our last letter, which is R. Is it reality based? Is this based in reality of what I need to do? Or is this some story I'm telling myself about what a good business owner or a good boss or a good wife or a good mom does? So if we ask those questions, is it connected to a goal? Is it linked to my North Star? Is it essential? Is it advantageous? Is it reality based? Every time we answer yes, you hold up a finger. If you have 3 or more fingers up, guess what? That's a priority. That is definitely something that is important. If you have fewer than 3 fingers up, it's probably not really a priority. It's not really something that's important. I think a lot of times we use the words important and urgent interchangeably. And urgent just means it needs to be something that needs to be done pretty soon because it has a deadline. Important means that it is all those letters we just talked about, connected to that goal. It's linked to your North Star. It's essential. It's advantageous. It's based in reality. And so really taking the time to, and you can see if you just hold up a finger, you could do this anywhere. You can do this as you're walking around your house or walking around Target or in the shower to figure out if something's really important. And once you start to create this designation between what's important and what is not important, it's so much easier to choose to prioritize what is really important.
Absolutely. Again, it comes back to that pause. right? We were talking about that
It
at the
does.
beginning of the episode. It's like, there is power in the pause. That is literally where so much of our power, it just leaks out the back window, right? But pausing gives you the chance to make the assessment. It gives you the
Yeah.
chance to think about it and not just react to something. It really gives you the power to choose, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
We
Well,
are,
we run around a lot with our hair on fire. And then we're like, I don't know why I can't figure out what to work on. And it's like, okay, let's put your hair out, first of all,
let's start
take
with
a
the
deep
hair.
breath. And then we have to ask the questions. So it's the pause. And a lot of times these pauses don't have to be long. A lot of this is, again, very, very simple. It's just choosing to step back and do the assessing.
What are some other areas, productivity leaks, I might call them, that you see particularly women in business having, and how do we start to like reclaim more of our time and our productivity?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make is they're very proud of their multitasking, right? That's a place where a lot of times, especially women, we love that we can do 5 things at the same time. And the truth is, and this is scientifically proven, there's a great study from the University of London that shows that when you are multitasking, you are operating at the same level as someone who has just smoked marijuana. So you may think you're doing great things, but you're actually operating at a much lower rate of quality. And so you're going to end up having to redo that work, or you're going to have to stop and you're going to have to fix something, or you're going to, right? We've seen this before. Like, think back to a time when you've been talking to a friend, maybe on the phone, and you're trying to do something on your website right? And your friend is saying something and you have no idea what she has just said.
Yep.
Because our brain is not designed to multitask. Our brain is designed with one track. Now, multitasking is not the same thing as background tasking. So that's important to clarify. Background tasking is when you're using 2 different sections of your brain at the same time. Driving a car and listening to music, walking and chewing gum. That's not multitasking. Multitasking is using that same section of your brain. For example, the communication section to try to talk to your friend on the phone and trying to communicate things on your website, right? So we want to be really cognizant of that. And again, this goes back to that idea we talked about of not going shallow, but choosing to go deep. When you go deep, your work is going to be better quality and it's actually going to be done faster. So choosing to go deep in your business, choosing to go deep in your relationships, choosing to go deep in every aspect of your world makes you happier. And really, I'm a firm believer that productivity and being truly productive. So productivity is not about doing more. Productivity is about doing what's most important. When we do what's most important, we're happier. And isn't that why we went into business for ourselves? We didn't go into business to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week. We did it because we were like, ooh, I'm excited about this. I can help these people. I can do these things. I want the freedom to run my life in the way I want to run it. That's what we're all seeking. Every goal you have ever set in your life is steeped in happiness. Why did you want to lose weight? So you'd be happier in your jeans. Why did you want to run the marathon? So you could have that feeling when you cross the finish line of being proud and happy, right? So why are we doing so many things that keep us from being happy? That's the big question.
Oh, that there is the prompt to journal on, my friends, right there. So one of my it's brilliant, by the way. I could listen to you all day. It's such good reminders, right? It's why we pause and have these conversations to bring light to what most of us are thinking, feeling, or experiencing, but we're often doing it in our own silo. So one of my final questions for you, and I can't not ask you this because I know everyone's going to want to know. So one of the first things that I did after I got your form was went to your Instagram account. And very quickly I see that you are social media free. And I was like,
I
okay,
am.
excuse me. That is a conversation to be had. And so for anyone that's not aware, you're completely social free, right? You don't use social media to market your business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn because it's very different and it's for grown-ups. It doesn't involve children at all. And I'm on YouTube because that's a search engine, not really social media, and I use it very differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, not on Instagram, not on Facebook, not on Twitter.
So tell me about the decision to do that and how then you focus on marketing your company outside of traditional social platforms.
Yeah. Well, I made the decision, and I talked about this because alignment is so important to me. I need to be
Mm-hmm.
aligned. Otherwise, I don't feel good. I can't go to bed at night. My head hits the pillow and I'm like, oh, I didn't do the things I felt like I wanted to do in this world. So alignment is really important to me. And I wasn't really happy on social media. I was finding myself in a lot of comparisоnism, looking at what everybody else was doing. I didn't like that. I felt like it took me out of the present moment. I'm really big on being present, especially with my family, with my kids. And we would be, I'd fix a nice dinner and I'd be like, okay, scoot back from the table. I got to take a picture, right? No, move your hand. And I'd start fussing and getting irritated. And I just felt it wasn't bringing me a lot of joy. So it goes back to that question, why am I doing things that aren't making me happy? So I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really enjoy social media, but this is something I have to do for my business. And this, I believe, is one of the limiting beliefs most business owners have. I have to be on social media because everybody else is. So I challenged that. I took a step back and I said, do I really need to be on social media? So I dove into Pareto Principle, which is a fantastic productivity tool that I use all the time. Pareto Principle talks about how it's the vital few that make the biggest impact. So I looked to see, okay, out of my ideal clients, the clients that I love working with, who love working with me, how many of them are truly finding me on social media and interacting with me there? How many of those people are getting converted into actually being paying customers through social media? So I dove into it. I started talking to my ideal customers that I work with and asking questions and surveying. And guess what I found? I was spending like a huge chunk of time on social media, and it was converting into very few customers. That's not a good use of my time, and it wasn't making me happy. So I started asking the question, well, where are they finding me? Where do they want to connect with me? On my podcast. Okay, well, if I took that time I was spending on social media, this giant chunk of time, and I spent it to really make my podcast even better, would that help me more? And I love my podcast. Okay, where else can I spend my time? Well, my email newsletter. Can I take that back? And that can be where they connect with me, which I'd much rather have newsletter subscribers than to have Instagram followers. That's traffic I own, right? And so I began to realize this has been a lie I've told myself for years, that I had to be on social media, that I have to be on Instagram. When the truth is, where my customers were finding me and truly connecting with me wasn't on social media at all. So why was I spending the time there? And again, going back to that whole alignment thing that I mentioned, I really still don't like how Facebook, Meta, the whole Instagram, I don't like how they market to our young girls, especially. There's a lot of problems with eating disorders and all kinds of things that we're finding are connected. And if I'm on a platform and I say, hey, come meet me here, that's me endorsing it. That's me saying you should be here too. And if I don't really align with how they run their business and how they practice what they do and interact with our children, I don't really want to endorse it. And so that for me was also the other part of it. It wasn't aligned, and it really wasn't where my customers were anyways. So it made a really difficult decision very simple. And that's what I love about productivity, is when you dial it in, a lot of these decisions become so simple and so easy because I can't argue with the numbers.
Can't argue with the numbers. And if you, again, pause and look at them, pause and evaluate,
There we go.
pause and go deep. There is the whole theme of the show, my friends, is look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. Ask questions, look at analytics. They are your friends. They are not terrifying. There are all kinds of systems and tools, which we didn't get into today, but there's all kinds of things to help support you on your productivity and to help you understand things more clearly. So I love it. And you've proved it. I think that you are a powerhouse, to say the least. You've built incredible companies with deep integrity and built a team and impact and all the wonderful things that you set out to do. So I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you, how to connect with you. What is the best way to get into your world?
Yes. Well, what the best way, honestly, is through my podcast. So whatever podcast player you're listening right now, as soon as this episode is over, you can search for me by my name, or my podcast is called The Intentional Advantage. We are close to 300 episodes. So there is a giant archive and vault of episodes where I talk about a lot of these things that we talked about here on today's show. So that's a great place to find me, The Intentional Advantage. Or you can go to my website, tanyadalton.com. There are links to my books there. There are links to my podcast, of course, and to learn more about me speaking.
Amazing. Tanya, my final question for you today is I would love to know what the word gutsy means to you.
I think gutsy means being aligned and living the life on your terms. And I think so often we say that in such a glib way, and it makes it sound easy, but it is hard at times to really stand tall and true to what you believe and what you desire and that vision you have, not just for your company, but for you and your family and your life and what you want that to look like. And that is really gutsy. It's when you can roll your shoulders back and hold your chin up high and you can say, this is what I want, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Boom. There it is. Tanya, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, your gutsiness, because you've said yes to you. You're impacting other women to do the same. So thank you.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun.
On this Thursday's Power Back episode, we're going to talk about how to motivate yourself. Look, my friends, motivation is not going to fall out of the sky and punch you in the face and make you feel like a magical unicorn. No. In fact, it's in those moments where you don't feel motivated that you must be your number one advocate. And how do you do that when you're not motivated? How do I get up and start doing the things when I have like zilch nothing left in me? Well, first, we must always honor our energy, but we're going to talk about that. And second, we're going to learn how to get up and get moving when your body and your brain is like, we ain't got it today. In the meantime, come get social with me. I love to have conversation and connect and learn what's going on in your world and how I can better support you. So I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. You can find me using @thatLauraAura. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.